Hello there, thrill seekers. Today's Friday flashback comes from August 28th, 2009 in the city of Jyväskylä in Finland. I was speaking at a library there, and that is actually pronounced Jyväskylä. It's a very strange looking word to us English speakers, but that's how you spell it. And in this video, I tell a story that I have often told about a Zen master who was commenting on the Om Shinrikyo incident, which I will talk about in the video as well. It's the incident where a guy, a cult leader in Japan in 1995, put poison gas on the Tokyo subway system, causing several deaths, and it was a big terrorist institute. But I found recently the article that I am referring to. I didn't realize I'd saved it all these years. It's from the February 21st, 2004 issue of the Daily Yomiuri, the English version of the Yomiuri Shimbun in Japan. And here's what it says. Here's the relevant parts so you'll know what I'm talking about, because when I reference it in the talk, I didn't remember all the details. It's about this Zen priest named Shinzan Miyamae. There he is. And here's what it says about him. Miyamae is the head priest of a Zen Buddhist Rinzai sect temple situated on the side of a mountain beside the Nagagawa River in Sekigifu Prefecture, an area renowned for its cormorant fishing. Wow, that's relevant information. Anyway, here's what the priest says. In one of his books, Asahara, that's the cult leader, wrote about his experience of disembodiment. Actually, I had a similar experience myself, the priest said. About 35 years ago, Miyamae meditated every day, only sleeping for a minimal amount of time. At one point during a meditation session, he could not feel his own body. After a while, the feeling left him, but the experience was so intense that he believed he had finally become emancipated so that he could give up worldly desires. I came to think I was a worthy person, he said. I wasn't afraid of death because I thought I had freed myself of worry. I felt as if I could do anything, he said. But he was admonished by his master. You may get all sorts of experiences while training, but you must not linger on them, his master told him. It took Miyamae about 10 years before he understood that lesson. Many Om followers, that's the cult, were said to have used Matsumoto's, that's the leader. He's sometimes called Shoko Asahara, sometimes Matsumoto. It's very confusing because he used fake names. Anyway, the followers are said to use Matsumoto's mystic experience, in quotes, as one of the main motivations for joining the cult. According to Miyamae, that's the Zen priest, however, such an experience is only the beginning of a person's spiritual training. And then, quoting Miyamae sensei again, Asahara mistook the experience for a sign of emancipation. His mistake was that he didn't have a master, Miyamae said. After the police began investigating the cult, more than 50 Om followers visited Miyamae, and nearly half of those quit. Half of those quit the cult. So this guy Miyamae, this Zen teacher, this Rinzai Zen teacher, helped a lot of these Om cult members out to get free of the cult. And that's what I'm referring to in this recording from Jyväskylä in Finland in 2009, August 28th. So let's take a look.
What would you say is the meaning of Sangha?
Sangha?
To a Sasana practitioner?
Yeah, well, I haven't been asked exactly that question, but some people sort of ask around that idea. So Sangha, for those of you who don't know, is the Buddhist order. So when Buddha was alive and had his group, he called it his Sangha. So there was a group of people who practiced together. And this is kind of an important thing. It's a kind of a daily ritual in Zen temples that say we revere Buddha, we revere Dharma, we revere Sangha. So Buddha is Buddha, and Dharma is the teaching, and Sangha is the group. And personally, I'm a kind of loner type of person. I don't like groups, I don't like organizations and things like that. So I always thought the Buddha and the Dharma was good, but the Sangha, whatever, I'm not that interested. But at the same time, there was a reason that I kept going to these group practices, like the Nishijima, when I said I hated him and I still went to the group, because there's a certain there's certainly something that happens when you're practicing this zazen with a group that doesn't happen when you're practicing alone. And I think actually most of my practice has been my individual practice at home by myself. That's my most important side of zazen practice for me, is that. But also there's this other side of practicing with a group which is also important. You know, and it's funny to talk about it in Finland because I realize there's not that much opportunity. I mean, people in America complain that there's not opportunity to get together with a sangha, with a group, but this is doubly true here, you know, because it's such a very minor thing. So I don't think it's absolutely necessary, especially at the beginning of your practice, to have a sangha or an organization, to belong to an organization. It's a good thing and it's a useful thing, but it's not absolutely necessary. If your practice becomes kind of stronger or more regular, you might want to get a group together. But you know, a sangha can even be just a group of friends who agree to do this stupid practice. You know, who was a Zen? I don't remember that. Somebody was telling me about this Zen master who said, "Zazen makes you more stupid." And I thought, that's right. That's how it's to make you more stupid. Who said that? Sung-san, the Korean, Zen master. So it is a kind of stupid practice, but if you can just find 2 or 3 people who do it together, if that's your thing, then you have a song. So I don't think it's absolutely necessary, but it's useful. And in some ways it's sort of annoying. Sangha is always sort of annoying to me because the group has its own mentality that sort of forms, and sometimes I hate groups. You know, I'm just not into it. And the problem for me is even worse because my teacher had this group he called Dogen Sangha, which is like this sort of. He started calling it Dogen Sangha International because he had a lot of teachers, or he made a lot of teachers from various countries. And now those teachers have gone out back to wherever they come from and started their groups. And now he has this sort of umbrella organization called Dogen Sangha. And he decided a couple of years ago that he wanted me to be the head of Dogen Sangha. And I'm like, I don't want to be the head of Dogen Sangha. You know, I don't want to be the leader of some organization. But my solution to that is to make Dogen Sangha the most disorganized organization. There's no organization, there's no structure, it's just a kind of loose group of people who are sort of have a common interest. So, you know, that's my opinion of Sangha, I suppose. It's sort of a vague, all my opinion.
What do you think about this role of the teacher in Zen tradition?
Role of the teacher?
Yeah.
That's also another important thing. You know, Dogen is kind of famous for having said, you should not study Zen, or you should not study Buddhism without a teacher. And that's a kind of a harsh statement. It's a statement a lot of people have a hard time with. But he didn't say you shouldn't practice Zazen without a teacher. He just said you shouldn't practice or study Buddhism. So the idea is that there's a sort of another level it goes to. So you can do your practice at home without a teacher, but once it sort of evolves, you might want to have a teacher. And the story I kind of always tell about why a teacher is important is do you guys know the name Shoko Asahara? Very famous person in Japan. You probably know, maybe, in 1995, Shoko Asahara, he was this guru who sort of claimed to be a Buddhist master, although he had no lineage or anything like that. He put poison gas on the Tokyo subway system during rush hour, early morning rush hour on a weekday. And several people were killed, and these trains are incredibly crowded. Several people were killed by the gas or by the panic that ensued when people started trying to run out of these trains. And eventually, actually, it was very easy to trace it back to Asahara, so he was caught very quickly, and he's been in prison ever since. I think, I'm not sure what happened with him in the end. whether he got a death sentence or something. But anyway, he was convicted of these as murder, as mass murder. But after this group was disbanded, there was something I was reading in the paper where there was an area in Japan where a lot of them lived, and there was a Zen teacher who lived there, and the story was about this Zen teacher. And the Zen, because these people came to Asahara because they had a sincere interest in sort of spirituality or something, they were searching for something, and so a lot of them came to this Zen teacher. So he had a lot of students who were former members of this cult. And this Zen teacher, in order to try to understand them, started reading the books that Shoko Asahara had written. And reading these books, he noticed that Shoko Asahara claimed to have a lot of these spiritual experiences, these so-called enlightenment experiences, which he would write about in his books. And the Zen priest read these books and realized that these were the same kind of experiences that he'd had, but he'd had a teacher. And whenever he brought these experiences to his teacher would say, forget about those experiences, go and continue your practice. And I've actually had that happen myself, and it can be devastating. It can really hurt to hear that, because sometimes you have these experiences in meditation that are just like giant experiences where you figure out everything, and I'm God now. I figured out everything. And then you go to your Zen teacher and go, Zen teacher, I'm God now, I figured out everything. And the Zen teacher, if he's a good one, or he or she is a good one, will say, forget that, just go back to your practice. And if you have a good relationship with your teacher, I can remember having incidents where that happened, where I'd be going, well, screw you, I'm God. I'm better than you, I know everything now. And then I think about it and go, well, maybe I don't, maybe I don't really know everything. And I trusted him, he'd become sort of a mentor to me, and I trusted him. So I'd be like, okay, I got to forget about this and go back to my practice. So that's one of the really important roles of the teacher, is to kind of keep you from going a little too crazy with it. And on the other side, to sort of encourage you when you get frustrated with the practice, because it does become frustrating, or to help you with a lot of the problems that occur. Because one of the things that happens when you do this practice is you're sitting there very quietly, and Nishijima Roshi likes to say it's like taking the lid off of a boiling pot, and everything just starts to bubble over, and all this stuff starts to appear in your mind, and you don't know what to make of it. And it helps to have a teacher to talk to about this, because ordinary people often don't go through those kind of things. But on the other hand, I don't think it's necessary to get this sort of mania to find, I must find a teacher, I must find a teacher, I really must, I must. Because sometimes the circumstances you find yourself in are kind of a lesson in themselves. So if you find yourself in a circumstance where you're very far away from a teacher, that may be a kind of teaching in itself that you have to find another sort of teacher. And, eventually you may come across one. People sometimes, the second question that usually comes up with that one is, how do I find a teacher? And it's really hard for me to answer that, because I found the two teachers I had totally at random, and they weren't far away. The first teacher, Tim, actually lived, there was an apartment complex near Kent State University, and he lived in the building behind mine, So all I had to do to go see him is walk across the parking lot, and there he was. So I don't have that experience of searching for a teacher. I think there's probably more teachers out there than we know about, and a lot of them don't advertise themselves. And a lot of people, you don't necessarily have to be a Zen teacher to be helpful in this. So, it's okay to just sort of relax and wait, maybe for the teacher to appear. I don't know. Maybe you have to do a little work. Maybe you have to do a little, but to get too excited about it and run around the world looking for one.